My name is Stewart Goodwin, and I'm the Executive Director of the Indiana War Memorials Commission. We operate 25 acres of property in downtown Indianapolis. Kind of a fun fact is that there's no city in the nation that has more acreage honoring veterans than Indianapolis. Our 25 acres combined with Crown Hill Cemetery, who has probably about 35 acres now, makes it so we can make that statement. There's only one place that has more memorials, veterans memorials, than Indianapolis, and that's Washington, D.C. We have 48 in Marion County, and we take care of several of them. So this job at the War Memorial is one of the best things that has ever happened to me. I thought I had some great jobs when I was in the Air Force, which I did for about 37 years. But the thing that's really neat about this position is that I get to be with veterans every day. And the thing that is amazing to me, and if you haven't experienced it, you might not understand, but a lot of people belong to sporting teams or Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, or whatever. And so there's something special about being on a team. But there's something really special about being on a team where people have taken an oath that said that they'll give and up to their lives to protect Americans that they would never know or never meet. And so there's something special about people that do that. And I don't say that for myself, I say it for all of the veterans that I've had the opportunity to meet over the years. So we have about, we're doing about 400 events here in the War Memorial. And when I got here, they were doing about 100 events that 150,000 people were attending. We're now doing 400 events, and we have over 1 million people that are on our properties, and it turns out to be about 566% increase. And the thing that is really interesting about the War Memorial is the fact that I came here on the 5th of March in 2005, and what we did shortly after that was that we changed our mission a little bit from the standpoint is that we want to tell people about Hoosiers that served. So the way the math works out is that there's about 1 out of 10 people who live in our country today who have served in the military. And so it works out to be about 90% that have not served, 10% have. So what we like to do is that we like to tell the 90% about what the 10% did so that we can all live free. And we specifically target Hoosiers because that's the state we live in, that's the state we love, and that's the state that a lot of us, when we took our oath of office, we were standing on Hoosier soil, and so it means a lot to us. And so what we try to do is that we try to tell these stories about ordinary Hoosiers that have done extraordinary things. And the storied military history of Indiana is unbelievable. And I could literally sit here for hours and talk to you about it. But what I'd really like to do today is I'd like to talk a little bit about, you've asked me about what I did in the military and how I came about being where I am today. And the fact is that I went to undergrad school at the University of Evansville, taught Detachment 240, and there were 13 people in our our commissioning class, and three of us made general. And like I was telling you before, I wouldn't have given you $5 that the three of us would have been captains, but becoming a field of, a flag officer, being a general is something that, most people, I never thought about it. Now I remember some people when they were lieutenants telling me they would be generals, and people like that don't usually, get to that point. But there's a lot of luck that goes involved with it. There's a lot of being in the right places at the right time. And I think that one of the things that I'd like to pass on to people is the fact that, and I think this pertains to a lot of things outside the military, but I think the success that I've had didn't come from me. It came from people who mentored me. It came to relationships that I made, and I think a lot of that was inbred in me because of my father. My father was a captain in World War II, Army combat engineer rebuilding bridges in Europe after Hitler blew them up. And he taught me a lot about NCOs, non-commissioned officers and officers, and the fact is that there's not one that's better than the other. It's one of those things that it takes a team to make things work. And so I never forgot that, and I never forgot about some of the things that he taught me about. Don't worry about getting promoted. Don't worry about advancing. What you need to do is that you need to do the job that you're given and do it well. And there's some things I learned over the years from some of my other mentors about the fact that that I think were part of any success that I had, and that is to take jobs that nobody else wants and to knock them out of the park. General Umbarger, who was the adjutant general when I was the assistant adjutant general, and just a fine officer, and I learned so much from him. But he used to tell us that if there's not good for everybody, we don't need to do it. And the fact is that what you need to do is that you need to think about that other person, and if you have to give them bad news or good news or whatever the case happens to be, there's a good way to do that, and there's a way that's not so good to do it. And I think that treating people the way you want to be treated, the golden rule, is something that was ingrained in me, and it's something that I always strive to do. I think another thing that was important to me was that coming up during the 60s and 70s, I got into ROTC in 1967. And this was a time when there was a lot of things going on with diversity, and things that we hadn't thought about, for a long time. And what I learned from sitting in a lot of staff meetings and sitting in mission briefings and stuff like that is the fact that if you're the commander or you're the officer in charge, and you look around at the staff table and everybody looks like you're in trouble. If they're all white guys or whatever, if they look like you've got a problem. Because people that have different chromosomes, people who have different color of skin, they have different backgrounds, and they have different thought processes. And I'll tell you, there's nothing more frustrating than to sit around and plan something, and then all of a sudden you do it and it doesn't work out very well. And then somebody in the group says, we should have done this. Well, where were you when we were sitting down talking about this? And I didn't feel comfortable, then I failed. If I've made it so they don't feel comfortable that they can voice their ideas, and I think a lot of that is because, especially with junior people, somebody will say something, and the person that's more senior would say, "You notice I didn't say superior, I said senior." There's nobody that's superior over anybody. They may be senior, but they're not superior. And so the fact is that if you make a comment to a junior person about that, that's the dumbest thing I ever heard. They'll never open their mouth again, and any good ideas that they did have will be lost. And so, sometimes you get those, and they'll say something and say, okay, well, we need to think about it. Let's talk about that offline or something. I think the other thing that is important that when I've talked to younger people since I've been retired is this business about working for me. This is not servitude. We don't work for people, we work with people. And I get so irritated when I hear somebody say, well, I have 17 people that are working for me. No, that's not right. You have 17 people that you're responsible for, but they don't work for you, you work with them. And that's what's really important about leadership, and a lot of that has been lost. And I think, I'm probably prejudiced about the fact that, I did 37 years and I've been retired now for since 2011, so we're talking about been out for a long enough time that I think differently about things like that. But sometimes I can't hold my tongue when I hear somebody say, well, so-and-so works for me. No, they don't work for you. You should work with them. And I think those little things are important because there's so many things that young people can do now. And when you recruit somebody and you take all the time and training and you get them up to speed, and then they stay for 2 or 3 or 4 years and then they're gone, it's so much better to retain people than it is to recruit them. Because once they've been there and they've done the work for 2, 3, or 4 years, not only have you lost that, but you've lost that experience that you can never get back. And they were doing things when you were doing things, and they were successful in doing them. So, and there's so many different opportunities now that people can, and a lot of it's driven by money. Anybody that's in the military that has anything to do with computers and that kind of business, they can go on the outside and pretty much write their own check about what they can do. But the truth is that we need people in the military. We need people that we can train, and we can make them better people, whether they stay for 4 years or they stay for 37 years. They're going to learn things, and they're going to learn about teamwork. I tell people all the time, because I get young people say, I'd like to be in the military, but I'm afraid about going to basic training. You should not be afraid about basic training. I'm going to give you the keys to the kingdom. You're going to be there for 10 weeks, and the fact of the matter is that if you guys got together and you said, okay, it doesn't matter who's the smartest person in this unit, we need to be a team. We need to work together, because that's what they're looking for you to do. And the sooner that you come together, the smoother things are going to go. And it's just something that, you have people from different socioeconomic groups, you have people from different parts of the country. Well, I'm this and I'm that. I used to be the big dog on the corner. Well, right now in basic training, you're not the big dog, and everybody's equal, and they move those leadership positions around so they can find out, who can do what and those kind of things. So I think there's just, I'm very strong on the fact that if I were king, I don't think everybody should join the military. I do think people owe something to their country. And that's, when you look back at our history and you look at the Civilian Conservation Corps, you look at the things that were built with different times, with different federal monies, that some of those buildings are still standing today. And the truth is that once we start paying people not to work, it gets pretty tough at that point in time. I think the other thing that I'd like to talk about for just a minute is the fact that I understand completely about the importance of history, especially with families, and especially about different ethnic backgrounds. And the truth of the matter is that we have morphed into using whatever country or whatever system that is, Americans. Well, when Ellis Island was opened up and these people came from all over the world, what happened was that they came here to be Americans. And what happened was that they assimilated into what the culture was here. And now we have people that want to come here, but they want to bring their culture from where they wanted to leave. If it was that good, I don't know why you left the culture. But the truth of the matter is, and I feel very strongly about this, is that I understand the importance of your knowing where you came from, because if somebody a lot smarter than I am said, if you don't know where you've been, you don't know where you're going. If you don't know the history, you're not going to be successful. And so what happens is that we have now lost that fact that we should be Americans first. We should take that ethnicity, and that what happened at Ellis Island and what happened when these people came here, that's what made our country so strong, because we had all these diversified thinking and experiences. But what happened was that those experiences then were put together about how to make America stronger and how to make it great. And when we've been challenged by other countries, World War I, World War II, it doesn't matter, Vietnam, whatever case, the desert wars, when people have come at us, what happened was that I think one of the reasons is because of the strength of our diversity. But we've got to be pulling on the rope on the same direction. Today, I think the art of debate has just lost. We can't have a difference of opinion, because all of a sudden it becomes personal. Well, what I fear of is the fact that someday, if we don't come back to being Americans first, somebody's going to tell us how to live. And we're not going to like it. We're not going to like it at all. Because that's, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, all of those freedoms that we have, and all of the freedoms that those of us that have served have fought for. And I can't tell you how many of the people I know during that time that have died and given their lives, in combat or training or whatever the case happens to be. It doesn't matter if you die in combat or you die in training. If you die while you've got the uniform on, you were doing something to make the military stronger. And so that's what we need to remember. And I can tell you, I can't tell you how many, but I have handed a lot of flags to a lot of mothers and wives. I've knocked on doors at 3 o'clock in the morning to tell them that their husband, when you're standing there in your Class A uniform and your service dress uniform, it's 3 o'clock in the morning and you're a colonel or you're a major or whatever, and they open the door, they know something's wrong. And the reason we have to do it, and as soon as we find out, because of the way the news cycles are, we don't want them to hear that from some radio station or TV station, and it's really difficult. I've been slapped, I've been hugged, I've been, get out of here. I've had several of those things happen to me, and at gravesite, I've been down on one knee and handed the flag to a mother or to a wife, and on behalf of Grateful Nation, the Secretary of the Air Force, I've had them jerk the flag out of my hand. That was their loved one. Now, it was representation of the United States, and I get cold chills every time I hear taps. When my dad's funeral, when they played taps at his funeral, I was crying. And I've cried before, and I don't think there's anything wrong with crying, because it shows how deep those roots run as far as having a brother or sister in arms. These are people that put the cloth of our nation on their backs and gone into harm's way. How can you not be emotional about that? And I'll tell you that there is no bond that I've ever been associated with that's stronger than the bond about military people. It's hard to describe about meeting somebody for the first time that you never met, and maybe it's in Europe, and maybe it's wherever you travel, and you meet that person and you have that instant togetherness. I don't know how the difference in age doesn't matter, the color of their skin doesn't matter, none of that matters. What matters is that they're a brother or a sister, and they've had the same kind of experiences, and that's why I am so lucky to have this job, because I do that every day. The other thing that we're doing now is that we've done it for about 12 years now, is that I'm involved with 8 different hospices in central Indiana. So when a veteran comes onto their service, they call me, and I get their information, their 214 or their discharge papers, and I memorize them, and then I go see them just before they die. And I've done hundreds of them, and it's the best thing I get to do, because I sit with these people that I just met, and I know everything about them. I know all about on that paper, if you know how to read the codes and all that business, you can tell just about everything about them. And a lot of these guys are within days. I've been to some where I do it in the morning and they died that afternoon. They're so close to death. And so, and the funny thing is that they couldn't tell you what they had for breakfast. Their minds are, they're going in the wrong direction. But they couldn't tell you what they had for breakfast, but they could tell you who their first sergeant was 50, 60, 70 years ago. And what's really funny is after you sit down and talk to them, these are these are people I never met before. And we start talking in acronyms, in military acronyms, and they start picking up and they start using acronyms. And usually, I've had 40 people, 40 family members or friends, in a big room, 2, 3, generations of family. And they're sitting there just hanging on every word. And my part in this is to get them to talk. And so when I'll talk about something, and I'll just tell you a real quick war story. This was a person that was he was in his 92 or 93, something like that, World War II guy, and he'd been in the European theater, and I read on his paperwork that he had earned the Purple Heart. And so the Purple Heart, for those that are not familiar with the military, is when you spill blood for your country. And so I could tell that he had earned a Purple Heart, but I couldn't tell where he earned it. The battle wasn't on there. So I'm trying to get him to talk about that. And the guy's name was Sonny. And I always sit next to him so I can touch him, and I'm real close to him. And there's just this bond. And so, and these people are just sitting there, silent. They want to hear everything about it. And so I said, Sonny, the Purple Heart. He says, I said, you remember that? He says, yeah, I got shot. And they were laughing. And I said, yeah, that's what happens. And so I said, you remember that day? And he says, yeah, I remember. And I said, well, tell us about it. I said, where did you get it? Thinking about battles. And he says, I got it in the butt. And there was this couple seconds of silence. And then these 30, 40 people that are out there, there were people, family members, on the ground, on the floor, laughing. And he and I are looking at each other, and I wasn't trying to be funny at all, and he wasn't trying to be funny, but they thought it was a riot. And there was some crazy uncle that was sitting over here in the room, and he said, oh, he's probably running away from the enemy, which I wasn't going to deal with that, that way. And I said, hold on here. I said, let's think about something. This comment about running away from the enemy. A lot of people who earn the Purple Heart get shot in the bottom. And the reason is because when you're in a prone position, your bottom is one of the highest points. And he's just trying to be funny. And it bothered me that he said he was running away from the enemy. And so, Sonny's sitting there talking about it. And so I said, no, Sonny, what battle were you in? And he said one word. And the word that he said was Balch. One of the worst battles in the history of our country. One of the most deadly battles. And I'm sitting next to this guy who survived that. And if you don't know about the Battle of Bulge, look it up. Google it, whatever, but very bad times. Bad weather, bad times, just bad. So anyway, getting back to Sonny, what we give him a coin, we give him a plaque that says you'll never be forgotten, that kind of stuff. And sometimes the family has gifts that they want to give him. So we get through all that, and then we give him a challenge coin. And so a lot of people don't know the history about the challenge coins, and if we have time, I could tell you this story real quick. Challenge coins go back to World War I, and there was an American aviator in France that was a really good pilot, but he was a better officer. And what he did was that he knew that if his people didn't take care of his airplane, it didn't matter how good of a pilot he was, that he wouldn't get to fly. And so he went into a shop in France and had some coins made. And then when people working on his airplane would do something extraordinary, he would give them the coin. And so through the years, it ended up being a challenge coin. And so if I saw somebody that did something extraordinary, I would give them a challenge coin. And there's a way that you present it. You put it in your hand, you clasp their hand, and you give them the coin. And so the challenge is that the next time I see you, I might challenge you to see if you have your coin. And if you have your coin, things are fine. If you don't have your coin, then you owe me a beverage of my choice. Well, I'll show you in the office, we got coin collection in there. You can't carry all those coins. You don't care anyway. You'd rather have a drink with, with the person that you gave a challenge coin than anything else. But that's where that's where it all came from. And so anyway, we gave him a challenge coin, and we're closing up with the ceremony on Sunny. And so I'm walking out, and this lady, she was senior, and she walked up to me and she said, "Thank you, General, for coming here today." And she says, "I have a favor." And I said, "Yes, ma'am." She says, "Can I give you a hug?" And I said, "Well, sure." And I gave her a hug, and she says, "I'm Sonny's wife. And we've been married for 69 years. I never knew where he got shot until today." I'm thinking 69 years that you know everything about this person that you're married to. But it goes to the fact that they didn't talk about it. It was something that when they came back from the war, they just didn't talk about it. But I thought, 69 years, you'd see, where he got shot or, something but nope, wouldn't talk about it. And so that really stuck in my head about the fact that when you hear people say, well, they just don't talk about it, that's true, that they don't. Anyway, in closing, I think probably the best thing that I could offer is maybe some final thoughts about leadership and things that people have told me. These didn't come, these aren't my thoughts. These are things that people have told me that I grasped onto. And probably the first one is, don't worry about your next promotion. Do your job, do it well. Any job, I don't care what it is, a bad job comes up, take it and knock it out of the park. Remember that we don't, and I think this is true on the outside as well as in the military, we don't promote people based on what you've done. It's the kind of thing, what have you done for me lately? No. We promote people based on your potential to do the next level of work. That's why some people, they get to be majors and that's all they ever are. They don't have the insight, or they don't have the initiative, or they don't have whatever it is to move on to that next level. So don't think about that. Think about doing your job as best as you can, and then always, 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 when somebody gives you an assignment, do not leave that person until you know everything you need to know to be successful. Because what may happen is you may not have the resources. You may not have the firepower. You may not have the number of people that you need. And so you make sure, and I do that even today, I want to know exactly what you want from me. What do you want from this unit? Because what I don't want to do is do what I think is right, take it to you, and you go, well, that's not what I meant. And sometimes just the smallest detail is something that has a hinge on whether you're successful or not. And there's nothing wrong with saying, I don't know. There's nothing wrong with saying, I'm sorry. I don't know the answer, but I will find the answer. If you don't know the answer, don't say it. Because the last thing that you do when you do that is if you say the wrong thing, credibility is a hard thing to get back. And if you're known as somebody that shoots from the hip, and you might or you might not get the right answer, people are not going to want you around. And they're never going to give you an opportunity to make good decisions or to make any decision. It's been a great ride, and I tell people all the time, if I had a chance to go back in, I'd do it in a minute. And it became my family. I mean, I'm not married, I don't have any kids. I have a sister that lives in Evansville and school teacher, but it just became my family. And I like living in a world where I know that the people that I'm around are pulling on the rope the same way. I like to be around people that will tell you what they're thinking, and if you don't like it, you can disagree with them. But if you're in a decision-making process, you want to hear everything that you can, so that eventually, no matter who's sitting around this table, You're the one that's going to make the decision. And so what you want to do is you want to have as much information as you possibly can before you do that. I never, my wildest dreams, thought that I would have these opportunities. But I think that, and this is something that that maybe we shouldn't say, but you need to have some type of faith. You need to know that there's something bigger than us. And you know that there are rules, and we need to abide by the rules. And when people don't abide by the rules, then we have chaos. And I think the last thing I'll say is be an American first. And thank you.